I am experiencing time. It's slowed right down so that I can almost hear the wings of insects. I mean that's symbolic,
yes.
But I would never have known this was what it was like.
The process of art making is one of waking up. I believe this is its big draw for so many of us. Making art provides a way to feel more alive, and this is made evident in our improving art. We're all in different stages of awareness, of course, and the experiences we encounter in our life can grow us if we're willing. All of it matters. All the challenges that felt insurmountable count. That day you opened a book of poetry to just the right page, that chance meeting with a perfect stranger, making or seeing that particular piece of art, falling in love, those indescribable times when everything felt so perfectly right. So much joy, and of course, the heartbreaks. What comes to grow our souls is a mystery. But whatever the gift or peril that arrives, we do have some choice in how we receive the learning that ultimately brings change and transformation to our door. Not just for ourselves, but for those with whom we share our life and art. Recently, I received a note from Margaret Christison, an artist who has gone through several of our programs. Although understandably one of the darkest and most challenging experiences of her life, her current life-threatening battle with cancer has also become one of startling beauty and grace. Margaret's unstoppable creative spirit and how it informs her world due in part to her diagnosis has become an incredible invitation for her to become more and more alive. Her positivity, creativity, and joy remind me that I already have what I value most. Margaret's insights and breathtaking clarity open my heart and help shift the thinking of my art. This conversation is just a gift to all who may be fortunate enough to listen. Examples of Margaret's art, photos, as well as her social links can be found in the show notes of this episode by visiting art2life.com and clicking on podcast. Margaret joins me now from her home in the countryside just south of Scotland. Welcome to Art2Life, a podcast for the creatively curious. My name is Nicholas Wilton, and each week I'll help you rediscover not just the art of your life, but the art in your life. Join me as we explore that perfect blue at twilight, the wild frontiers of art making, and the extraordinary joy of finding your way as you go. Super appreciate you having this conversation. I'm down in Mexico at this workshop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time. It's really exciting.
Yeah. My sister and my mom and my dad, went through chemotherapy and stuff. So I know there's some days you feel better than others and other days not. I hope today's okay for you. I want to be mindful.
Well, since I spoke to you, I'm not able to have chemotherapy in the meantime. It's my bone marrow has been compromised, so I'm seeing a hematologist. But in the meantime, I'm not getting that. So the upside of that is that I'm feeling great. But the thing that I've had to adjust to is I probably have a shorter time. But it's part of my journey and part of my adjusting. So but I'm just bringing you up to date with that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what was so interesting about our conversation and, going back and forth in email and, as you know, this journey, as you describe it, it's all discernment and sort of waking up. And I know that these things that come along, hard things, whatever, they wake you up. And I just thought it was just some of the things you were talking about and saying, it woke me up, it just reminded me of and I don't know why it is that we lose our way in this, that we kind of tend to forget and we get lulled to sleep and we just get involved in inane stuff in our life,
Well, I think you give a hint of it, more than a hint, with the course and what Gay Hendricks was saying about really asking yourself. But I mean, in up to 2019, I was working sometimes 7 days a week.
You're kidding.
And absolutely loving what I was doing. But it was, I was still to a certain extent awake because the nature of my work was so exciting, and it was what I was meant to be doing. But
what was that kind of work? I'm just curious.
Training counselors.
Uh-huh.
So training people to be counselors, therapists. And at that point, I'd been invited to set up a course in Shetland, which I don't know if you know Shetland, but it's the island furthest north of Scotland. It's level with Norway. It's way out in the Atlantic Ocean. And I was invited to set up this course. And so I could not say no. And I don't regret it. I loved it, but it meant that I was working weekends. And but what an amazing experience it was. So coming back to what you were saying, though, it's life can just get so fast, and we stop being connected. And I think we've just had a storm. I don't know if you heard about it, if it was in your news, but we had hurricane force winds here, 98 miles an hour.
Wow.
And yeah, just to not last weekend, but the weekend before. And
where are you located exactly?
I'm south of Scotland.
Okay.
In the border. I'm 20 minutes from the border to England.
Okay.
And beautiful place. We have ancient trees here, like 600-year-old tree was felled with the storm.
So this is an unprecedented storm.
This is never within living memory. And my favorite tree was a copper beech tree, and it was uprooted. And there were sequoia and oak trees, all devastated, all gone. But this tree, my favorite tree, took the dog out in the night and went to see it early the next morning. And when I was sitting with it, it's really touching me now, I felt such an affinity with this tree because it had stood for hundreds of years. So it grows really, really slowly. And then it suddenly uprooted, and that's the end of its life. And so strangely, I felt such an affinity with it because I have such a short life compared to a tree, but my death is longer. And you know, we were so close in that moment. It was beautiful. It was so amazing. Really,
yes.
really
And
special.
Wow. And so just you wake up.
Yeah, you wake up.
Yeah.
And there's something about being with nature that is, you can't help but wake up. I have a friend who, he was a real city guy, and his favorite thing were his Converse trainers. That was, I mean, he really loved them. And he was in a really bad way. This is a few years ago. And he was we call it on the dole, unemployment benefit.
Yes.
And you have to turn up and write letters to show that you're trying to get a job. And he was offered a project which he was cleaning out this canal for 3 months. But the woman who was with him and organising the project, there were about 10 of them, she took them foraging in the forest and showed them what plants you could make moisturiser with and what plants you could eat. And he learned, he had to dive into the canal to learn life-saving. And it's transformed his life.
Yes.
He's become a vegan. He's discovered his spiritual side. And, it's being with trees and with nature, I believe that the answer is.
Yeah, there's this, I think we can see the patterns and the repetitions. I do a lot of running, and, I run all year, and you run in the winter, and it's cold and things are quiet, and then spring comes and things rebirth, and then it's just this cycle going on, and it sort of normalizes it in a little bit, and there's this funny thing that's been happening lately for me where, like, I'm slowing down, like we're all kind of on a path we're all ending slowly. I cannot run up these hills like I used to. So I kind of walk up them or, and I see older trees, and I see the trees that fall down, and then I see the trees. And sometimes these trees fall down and they do this thing where the branches, they have branches, but suddenly those start growing straight up, like, and then the small branches, they become trees themselves. So there's this, I think we just see these cycles. It just normalizes a little bit, maybe. I'm not sure, I have to be in nature. I'm exactly, I call it moving through landscape. There's something about moving, which is the alive part, and then the landscape is the timelessness part. And I don't know if I'm kidding myself, but I feel not empowered, but maybe just alive or a participant, but I have some control, sort of, because I'm moving. I must be alive because I'm moving. I don't know. I don't know.
I love how you put that, because it's all about rhythm. The rhythm of your running and the rhythm of your heartbeat. There's something that fits with the landscape. I know what you mean when you say it's like you're the one that's moving, but actually everything's moving. Mm-hmm. And the trees, the molecules of the trees, I've just become so aware of the micro and the macro of life. And the trees are moving, but so slowly compared to us.
Yes, right.
That there's. I mean, we are so fast. I don't know if you've read Lord of the Rings. Have you?
Years ago.
Okay, I read it when I was a teenager in a forest, in the ancient Caledonian forest.
Wow.
I was reading about Ents, and what I love about that particular part is the Ent. The tree shepherd, the shepherd of the trees, they have such a slow language, and they think that humans and hobbits are so fast. We just move too quickly. And it just brought awareness of the life and the song of the trees. It was just special. Yeah, really.
You spoke about, you wrote me about sort of this Gay Hendricks, who wrote The Big Leap, this idea of Einstein time and Newtonian time, how time can feel different. And, just to catch, we actually I did an interview with Gay, there's a link to that in the show notes, because it affected me too, that book. Yeah. But just basically the idea, and you can kind of correct me, his realization is that we live in a Newtonian sort of time frame where everything's linear. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we're rushing around. We only have so much time. But actually he believes, and I think he's accurate here, that the time isn't like that. It's more what he calls Einstein time, which is that we, instead of time being outside of ourselves, it's something that we create, that we can control. And this idea that if you're sitting on a stove, time feels like forever, and you want to, but when we're present, when we're with a loved one, or when we're making our art, when we're really in the moment, time stops and it changes, and it's longer. And so, those two experiences, that's the same amount of time. We're in time, but so we do have some control over this. And you were saying that idea has been really helpful. I was wondering if you could kind of dive into that a little, because I think it's huge, and I'm not totally able to get this, to be honest. Well, so I love that you do.
In my head, I don't get it completely, the science of it. And I understand the concept of it being like folded so that it fits into Newton time, which is a man-made construct anyway. Like I've got a clock here that is ticking in segments of time chronologically, but the idea of time being folded and opened out, I'm experiencing that, even although I don't understand it intellectually. And the way I'm experiencing it is, I noticed that one of the few things that was upsetting me about this whole thing, about my short time, was when people would talk about, oh, time goes so fast. I mean, I can't believe that it's 21 years since the millennium. And I'll be doing this in 2004. And it suddenly jars with me, or did do until I explored it, that I won't be here when they're talking about that. And that was quite hard to deal with. But since I kind of got my head around it, there's several things going on in my mind just now that I am experiencing time. It's slowed right down so that I can almost hear the wings of insects. I mean that's symbolic, yes. But I would never have known this was what it was like. And I remember when I had chemotherapy last year, everything that happened to me that was unpleasant, it had this goal that I would live longer and that I would be cured, and that, it had a purpose. And I met this amazing guy in the ward who had a terminal diagnosis. And I thought, oh my goodness, how do you live with that? And it really upset me that this guy had no hope. I thought, it's not like that. And he wasn't like that. It's like the purpose has changed, but the living is richer.
Yes.
And that's what it is. I had a blip. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really have dark times. And I had a dark time on Sunday. And I went on this cancer website and got even more depressed because the headline was pancreatic cancer, despair. No, I don't want that. That's not what I'm looking for. I needed to have information, which I got, but that's not what I want. I don't want to be miserable. So I have the luxury of choosing not to be miserable, and choosing. I have a great capacity. I've always had a great capacity for enjoyment and enthusiasm. My son-in-law says I'm the most enthusiastic person he's ever met, but I have deeper resources than I even realized in taking joy and pleasure from the things around me.
I love the idea of we unfold our time, but we unfold our experiences and we unfold our joy. It's like it's sort of like it just can open and open and open. And there's an opening of ourselves that occurs with this. There's a vulnerability. I mean, I learn about this through art making, and I'm curious about, I know that we've met because you did one of my programs, and art is a study of nature and it's metaphor. And tell me a little bit about your art and where that's fallen in this time.
Okay. Well, there's a wee interesting backstory to how I found out about the breadcrumb challenge. I'll just explain real quick the breadcrumbs challenge, you guys, for those of you who, obviously a lot of you know that I teach art, but I'm
particularly interest, well, it's what the subject matter of this podcast is about, is about finding our way and journey and path and creative path and using art to do that. And I have a sort of, it's a free thing. It's an invitation to do what we call it's called the breadcrumbs challenge. And it's what I've used in the past to discern clues in my art making about where I want to go. And so we moved through this over 4 or 5 days. And I guess that's when you first came in. I do it online. I've done it in person, but I do it online. And that's where Margaret, where I guess you kind of found me, I think.
Huh. Yeah, but it was interesting because it was one of my best friends took me to her caravan for a couple of days in St Andrews, the home of golf, and on the east coast of Scotland.
Uh-huh.
And she said, I've just met someone from the States. She was over here for a reunion, visiting a friend in Edinburgh. And she's told me about this art thing, and we've discovered that we both love art. I think you might like it. She's gone back to America, but this is the link. And that's how I got involved. So it came over the Atlantic with this person whom I haven't met. And here I am talking to you. That's amazing.
And so what happened? So have you always made art, or how does art fit into your?
I drew before I could walk. Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to be an artist. And so I went to art college in Edinburgh, and I did sculpture and drawing and painting. And then, I mean, it was the height of my dream come true to go to art college. I was completely involved in it. I was one of those students who worked through the day and then did the evening class. I loved it so much. And then my mother died, and I lost my direction. And I finished art college, but I lost heart. And so over the years, I've made things. I've always made things. I've done painting. I had an exhibition when I was ill, round about the 2004, which helped my recovery then. And so it's like that now, in a way, with your course. It's reminded me of the joy of art making and the freedom of expression and the deep connection that I can make with just the material. So I've been going back to making sculpture with clay. And during my chemotherapy last year, I lost dexterity in my fingers. And so I couldn't draw finely. And I've got some paintings that are incredibly naive, but have their own charm. And so that was very new to me, not having the control. But when I joined the Breadcrumbs Challenge, it was all about losing that control or laying it aside, choosing not to be tied up in detail and just a whole new language, really. I hadn't thought about why paintings work in the way that you describe. It's a new way of seeing, particularly your concept of difference. I love that. Mm-hmm. And although I was maybe doing that intuitively, and I didn't have that piece of language knowledge, so that was exciting to me.
Yes. And I love, your realization that, well, for example, this realization that, okay, we think we make our art in a certain way. You have a certain facility with your fingers, and temporarily you lose that ability. But that's not actually what is the art.
Exactly.
It's the making that you can have, and the feeling of feeling and thinking, and then manifesting it, with movement, taking action and doing something. It's like moving through landscape, the repetition of foot strike, that there's a rhythm that we feel, and then we have evidence of that feeling because we're doing something, just something outside of ourselves. I'm teaching right now at a workshop in Mexico. That's where I am right now. That's why there's probably roosters and you can hear them in the background. But one of the participants came, and on the first day, she slipped and she broke her arm. She broke her right arm.
God.
I mean, she's in a cast and, off to the hospital, and she's back, but she's painting with her left arm now, her left hand.
Her non-dominant hand.
Yes. And
wow.
And she's a makeup artist. This is what she does professionally at like a very high level for the Hollywood. And, so this is a big deal. I mean, she's, it's a serious thing, but it's kind of amazing watching. I mean, she hasn't missed a beat. I mean, the art she's able to participate in this as well, if not more.
Oh my gosh.
But we could make art with our feet and it would still give the same, there's something about it that clarifies. I don't know why. I mean, I just love this subject because it's such a friggin' mystery, but there's something about, when someone has a question with what they're making or what they're trying to do, really the answer comes from doing more, you just gain insight to that. And there's a certain thing, and I was curious about this with you. I talk about risk a lot, and we take little risks in our life, and we go outside of our comfort zone a little, and the invitation is there in our art. And I'm wondering if, the bar's been raised for you, in your life. I mean, everything is more important and more heightened. And how do you feel about risk and risks you've taken? And I'm just curious if you have perspective on that.
It's so interesting because we're living in such strange times that there's a new risk, which is challenging me. My friend Ken, whom I see every week, he said when I got this latest prognosis, that my time was going to be even shorter, he said, so you won't be having visitors then because you'll be shielding. We've got this word shielding for people whose immune systems are very low. And so I said, no, I can't do that. If I'm not going to see anybody, I'm going to be here not seeing anybody for the rest of my life, because this is as well as I'm going to be just now physically.
Yes, right.
So I would have, in the past, I would have loved the idea of going to, I always wanted to go to America, to Mexico rather. I've been to America. So those kind of risks are no longer kind of open to me, I think, because I do want to stay alive as long as I can, for myself, but also for my family.
Yes.
So I'm not taking certain risks, like I may
physical
not,
risk to your health and
physical and my health. Yeah.
Right.
But
psychological risk or risk of vulnerability or, having this conversation is risky. I mean, it's challenging. We don't talk about hard things. I mean, I haven't ever had a conversation. I'm not even quite sure how to have a conversation like this. It's just so powerful and so emotional, and it's scary, and it's just so raw,
Yeah. And this is territory I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And I suppose it is risky because I want to be real with you. And I suppose the riskiest thing I can do is to share my innermost thoughts and areas of my life which can be seen as weird and off the wall. Mm-hmm. And I've touched on it with my connection with the tree, with the copper beech tree. But there's so much more that's
Really?
going on for me, Nicholas.
Yes.
And it's in the area of synchronicities.
Yes.
And when you're really awake, then weird things happen that are amazing and magical and so affirming of life, and kind of put life and death into a perspective that is risky to talk about, because I would normally tell these things to only certain people.
Yes.
And speaking to you personally, it doesn't feel risky at all. And I'm aware, you've made me aware of all these people who could be listening. And you know, I embrace that. There will be people who don't have the same beliefs as me, but that's okay. But that's risky.
This idea, it's why I'm sitting here, actually. I'm an artist, and I started teaching art and teaching people how to mix colors. And it's just really to get out of my studio, because it's so damn boring staring at your own work and just talk to somebody else kind of thing. But when I started to see, and I worked with people in a mentorship program, and I was doing, 10 or 12 at a time. And I would work with them and sort of help them set intentions, get clear about what they wanted. I mean, dreams or otherwise. And what I saw unfolded, sort of those synchronicities, or how is that possible that the right person showed up at the right time? We experience that a little in our life. And I thought that this was just something that, it's crazy things happen in your life. But when I saw it happening to 10 or 12 people all at the same time who didn't know each other, I knew, I didn't understand it. I still don't entirely, but I knew it was a thing. And I leverage that. It's what interests me. It's what makes amazing art. And there's some things about it that I have noticed for example, that my whole life changed when I started helping people more and sort of serving a little bit and just kind of shutting up about my own self. And there's something about that makes you open and makes you available. And you, as you know, you get so much more back. I mean, it's very self-serving teaching in a way. I mean, this isn't like I'm serving people. This is like fueling me. And I was thinking about it the other day that, just to let the listeners know here, Margaret emailed me. Really, it wasn't sort of, hey, I'm struggling with cancer. It was more that I want to help somebody. I have a very close friend who's been helpful to me, and I want to help her with her creativity. And she asked a favor of me. And through that act of generosity, through that giving, we're having this conversation now. That's what drew me to this. And isn't that interesting, right? And now other people, probably thousands of people, are listening to this conversation, impacting. It just spreads. I just find it so incredible.
You're right. And it spreads. And yet that's not what's in the news.
No.
And when you said about being involved in your art and then to get out the studio and meet people, there's something about that rhythm. I once, very early on, wanted to make art my business. And I didn't know much about business. So I had a meeting with, it was a business startup thing. And the woman despaired of me because she said, your life is a patchwork. You can't do all these different things. You have to choose one thing and then really focus on it. And that's how you get success. So I walked out of there and said, you're not right. You are not right about me. Right. I love patchwork. I love having lots of things. So they feed each other. So when I was seeing clients and counseling people, I didn't want to do that all week. I wanted to teach. So the teaching fed the counseling, and the counseling fed the teaching. And what art practice I had and all the things I was interested in fed each other and kept me from burning out. So I think you're absolutely right in that. And whenever we, as you say, whenever we do help someone, it's not for the purpose of self-aggrandizement, but oh my gosh, it comes back in other ways that are unlooked for.
And it clarifies, and that's what I think is so powerful, and is the big connection to art making, that when we sort of get a little more clear about what we're making, or what we want, or what we care about, or the truth we have within ourselves, when we can speak to that. And you're optimized for truth. Truth is the terra firma for you, and I get that. Yeah. Whenever we are in a crisis or a challenge, it's like, what's safe, and we all have this, but it gets overlaid with our ego, or all the thing. Our parents think we need to do this, and but there's an underlying essence, a truth, a soulful conversation, a thing that is inside of ourselves, that when we get closer to that just a little bit, this is when the art starts getting different and powerful. And actually, when things outside of ourselves pay attention and opportunities show up, synchronicities align. I mean, it's just amazing. But I think it's because it's like the sound, the message is more clear, and so the response becomes clear. The question is more clear, and so the answers come in, and they come in different forms. This is an answer. This is part of your questioning, and I'm learning from you here, and this is all absolutely perfect the way this happened. It is just so typical, but crazy.
Amazing. Yeah. And so how do you become awake? You start noticing the signs that people will say to you, oh, that's a coincidence. It's nothing but a coincidence. So pause and say, well, what could it be telling me? And I've got an example. I mentioned my dark moment on Sunday. So I was looking for a sign. Now, I'm pausing here because this is pretty risky.
No, it's okay.
I opened my emails, and there was this horoscope guy who was saying that you could send me a message. Now, I'm not really into that, but I was pretty desperate for something.
Yes.
So I opened it up, and he said, I can put you in touch with your guardian angel. So that sounded okay. Let's go for that. Let's see what happens. But at that same time, I had George Harrison's album sitting on the side of my bedside cabinet, and this line came into my head: "We know not the time or the place," and that's from Matthew in the New Testament. Now, I'm not in the Christian church, but right. I looked it up, and it said there will be people who will deceive you and give you the wrong message, and then it said there will be times of war and rumors of war, but be not troubled, because the end is not yet.
Mm.
And that's what I was looking for, because I felt I was going to die this week. That was my crisis. With this new bit of knowledge that I was not going to be allowed to have chemotherapy, came this kind of dark place. But there's still things I want to do. I'm not prepared. And yes. I really, not this week, please, not this week.
Yes.
I want to have Christmas. My family are coming. I'm having such a good time. And I was so affirmed in that. And people would say, that's a coincidence. You can't. I don't care if it's a coincidence for you. It was what I needed, and it came in my moments of darkness.
Yes.
And it, if I did die next week, it would be okay in that was my time. But it was incredibly comforting, and releasing and celebrating, and so
yes. And couldn't we say that? Couldn't we all say that right now to ourselves? It's now, and this idea of presence, because that's what the invitation is. It seems to me is okay, freak out.
Yeah.
If you want, or be here. Yeah. This is the invitation with art, actually. When we become present, that's what we do when we're really making art. And that's why time kind of stops. And all the concerns about what is going to happen or what did happen are not there.
Yeah, the past is you can leave that behind, and also not be afraid of the future, because that's wasting just now.
Yes.
I mean, this thing about living in the moment and being happy with what I have. It was my friend Jerry, he's a filmmaker, and we worked together and used to walk down in Edinburgh, down to the beach, and have lunch there sometimes. And I said to him one day, this is about 10 years ago, "How are you doing, Jerry?" And he said, "Great. I mean, look at the sea, the sky, the sun. I mean, how could you know me? This is great." So, that's really good. And as we walked down, it's about half a mile, he started to tell me some of the things that were going on in his life. His divorce had come through. Work was very challenging. He had real problems at work. Finances were really bad. And I said, "Jerry, how can you tell me all these things and yet say, when I ask you how you are, you say, 'I'm great'?" And he said, "I could choose to be miserable, but I don't want to be." And that has stayed with me all these years. And that doesn't preclude people who are clinically depressed and don't have the choice.
Right.
But I have the choice to be happy or not.
Yes.
And oh my God, life is much better when I choose that.
Yes.
It's joyful. And sometimes I have dark times and I allow myself that. I don't give myself a hard time. But his words have stayed with me and helped me.
We get to choose, we get to choose this. And the way we think, the way we hold our experiences and how we frame them is and the evidence of how we are doing it, that's what's creating the journey. That's what's creating the complexion and the texture of the journey. It's like art. And I was talking to everyone about this yesterday in the workshop, that yes, you're making these little paintings and some are turning out and some aren't and some are good. But really what we're learning here is we're learning a practice. We're learning a way of being. And it generates, there's artifacts, there's paintings and things that we make from it. But we want to get better and better at this practice. And the practice is the journey. And I love that idea.
I love that idea, Nicholas. And it takes me right back to your running. Your practice of running is the rhythm and motion through the living landscape that's also running with you, but far slower.
Yes.
But the painting that you're doing is the rhythm. It's not the product, it's the doing of it.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
yes.
yeah.
And that's that unlocks, that brings in things in your life that tells you where to go, that's incredibly meaningful, I think, and discerning what matters and how to find your way.
Do you know when you're using the word discernment, and again, it's coming back to choice. When you've got colours on, that you've got colours that you're choosing and some of them you don't like. So you adjust it until you do like it. Those movements of choice and discernment, you can lay that whole way of choosing and discerning onto this, what I've just said about being happy. And it's about being awake, because so often we're asleep and we get into the habit of saying, how are you? Oh, not bad. So actually, do you mean not bad, or do you mean quite good?
Yes, right.
Because,
right.
And to catch yourself using language and to notice what you're saying, because your whole body and your whole system hears what you are saying.
Yes, yes.
And will go with it. So if you're saying, I'm not bad, then your whole system will be different to saying, yeah, I'm good. It's so important, I think.
Yes, yeah. How to hold that kind of energy, and it's just awareness. It's an art. This life.
It is an art. Yeah.
It's an art.
Life to art. Art to life. I love it. Yeah.
Margaret, listen, thank you so much for this conversation. It's really a privilege.
Well, I feel the same, Nicholas. I've so enjoyed speaking to you. This has been great.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Art2Life show. If you enjoyed the podcast, please help me get the word out by sharing it with your friends on Instagram at Art2Life_world. The recording of this and all episodes, along with a place to leave comments, see additional photos, and discover a whole new approach to making art, can be found by going to art2lifepodcast.com. And secondly, if you could leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on today, I would super, super appreciate it. It makes a big difference. And last but not least, before you go, if you'd like to be on my artist list, every Sunday morning I send out a video blog all about art making. Go to art2lifepodcast.com to sign up. And all these links are in the show notes, of course. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.